All right, so let's talk about creating the workflow inside REI Reply. So right now I'm inside the CRM. Basically, I'm actually using a training account, Russ. And to access workflow or automations, you can select automation from the left-hand panel of REI Reply. So this is what you're gonna see. So you're gonna have workflows tab. So make sure that you're on that tab. And then from here, obviously you're going to see all of the workflows you have previously set up for your account. And what else you're gonna see here, obviously when it's created, when it's last updated. So you can also organize this by folders. You can create a folder or even use an existing folder to move your workflow in there just for the sake of organization. But obviously, the purpose of this video is to help you create your first workflow. So from here, just click on create workflow from the top right corner. And then as soon as you select create workflow, you will have an option to select existing templates like pre-made templates. So these are all the recipes you can actually use. We have basic here like appointment booking, appointment confirmation reminders, so you can use any of these. For the sake of this video, obviously we want to start from scratch because we want to understand how we're actually going to go about creating our own workflow. The very first thing that you're going to see inside the builder is titling or creating a title for your workflow. How you want to name your workflow is always based on what is the purpose of your workflow. So for example, I want to create a workflow in which when I receive a text from my recipient that actually says stop, or say that person responded, do not contact me, I want to be able to have the system automatically tag them and put them on a pipeline. So here I'm going to name it as move lead to DNC or do not contact list, right? So this workflow is about how the lead is being moved to DNC. Before we move to builder, I just want to cover a few basic settings inside the builder. So obviously we have the zoom in, zoom out option. If you ended up like building a big automations, you definitely would find yourself having a hard time seeing everything. So the purpose of this is being able to see all the workflows so you can zoom in, zoom out, like shrink on the left hand side to be able to view everything inside your workflow. And then we also have this 4 different menu tabs that you can see. We'll have general settings, a little bit of information. This general settings is for the overall workflow. So everything you set up here carries over to everything else you set up inside your builder. Let's start with sender details, okay? Because this is, like I said, carries over to your existing builder. So whatever you set up as the sender details, so if you're doing email marketing, that all my emails is gonna come from JC Tan, and the email is like info@jtvirtualassistance.com. This is going to be the default from name and from email for all the emails that you have set up in your actions. So automated emails, right? Although you can override this within your email actions within or inside the builder. But obviously, just to make it simpler and easier, if you're going to be using the same email, just put it in the general settings. Now, we also have 3 other settings. We have contact settings, communication settings, and conversation. So let's start with contact. Contact settings is, we have first is allow re-entry, which is previously called allow multiple. This is allowing your contact to run multiple times in a certain campaign or in a certain workflow. Normally, we do allow re-entry if it's initial campaign text message because we want the contact to enter this multiple times, because obviously contact can enter different campaigns. They can be part of vacant campaign, they can be part of probate, and you don't want them to not receive text just because this is turned off, right? Although for follow-ups, a different scenario, because for follow-ups, you don't want them to re-enter the same campaign over and over again. You just want them to be here one time. So if you only want them to be here one time, then you can obviously turn it off to make sure that they wouldn't re-enter the same campaign. So the idea is that if you ever entered a contact here and this is basically turned off, it's just gonna skip this process, meaning they're not gonna receive the text or any actions, any emails that you did inside the builder. For me, right now, since I'm doing like initial campaign, I want my contacts to re-enter anytime, then I'll turn it on. I also have stop on response. Again, for initial text message, you want them to not receive the second actions just because your initial response is like, hey, are you the owner of the property? And then the second would be, are you really the owner of the property? So it's like the same purpose of trying to see if they're the owner. You don't want them to receive the second text if, let's say, you've already validated on their response that they are. This is normally turned off though if let's say you're doing reminder notifications like for appointments, because for appointments you normally would send multiple reminders, like 1 day reminder, 1 hour reminders. It's not like if they responded that hey, I'm gonna go, then you wouldn't remind them again before an hour the appointment. So normally, I think most of the time this is turned on. Only for booking appointment, then this is going to be turned off. Right now, I'm going to do, turned on, because if somebody said do not contact me, they responded do not contact me, then I don't want them to do anything else, or the workflow to not do anything else. We also have communication, where you can select the time zone. Recommendation is to select contact time zone. So even if you're in a different time zone, you're still making sure that you're following your contact time zone. You have time window, very, very critical, because this allows you to make sure that you're not sending any text message, especially text message, guys, because as you know, we have allowed window to send or receive text. Not to receive, but to send messages or to call somebody, especially doing SMS marketing. So do make sure that this is set to only between 9 a.m., let's say, to 7 p.m. to be safe. If you do want to include Saturdays or Sunday, then please do make sure to put a check mark to make sure that you can also run your campaign within those dates. But if not, then just remove the check mark and that's gonna do it. So again, this time window will generally apply to any actions that you're doing inside Builder. We also have the conversations, which is marked as red. I actually did this very example, move lead to DNC. That's because if somebody said stop, you don't want them to be in your conversations anymore. Like, you don't want to see them there. In this case, in my general settings, I just don't want to see them, so I'm gonna mark it as red. Obviously, for just general responses that you need to attend to, make sure that this is turned off. So this is only applicable for scenarios like do not contact me, I'm not interested, sold, right? Those are the types of lead that you don't want to be in your conversation. So for those type of scenarios, you can toggle this on. So yeah, that's obviously what we have in general settings. And we also have enrollment history, where in the steps of the automation, if something failed, this is where you can see them. Something did not happen inside your automation, then this is where you're going to see what is the error message to allow you to troubleshoot that specific issue. For me, this helps me a lot during troubleshooting, and we're going to have a different topic for that. And we'll also have execution logs. This is pretty similar. Actually, you can also filter them the same way, a date, all actions, statuses, and if you do have specific contacts, you can do that. The difference is the fact that execution logs allows you to see the status, any workflows actually happening, and at the same time knowing what will be sent next to a specific lead, right? So you can kind of see more details in this area. Obviously, when you named it, make sure to save all the time. Make sure that you save all the time, because you might lose whatever you have going on if you don't save. So it's like in a Word document to save it all the time. Like, that's the best practice. Finally, you'll have draft and publish as the option. Know that when you don't publish, it's not going to be live. So to make it live and working, make sure it's publish and save. If it's in draft, it's actually not working. You can also simply select test workflow to test whatever workflow you're doing inside your workflow automation. So let's go back to the builder, or like, how do I create my workflow if I want my leads to be tagged DNC, or to move my lead to that pipeline DNC at the same time for them to automatically get response that will never gonna contact them, or whatever you want to do. On our previous lesson, we did discuss the purpose of trigger, or what is trigger. Trigger is going to be our stepping stone, the first step, or the gun that is going to trigger the action. Without this, your action is never gonna happen. So the trigger is like what has been done. Let's say my lead responded to a text, or my lead filled out a form, so that's the trigger. And when you do select the option add new workflow trigger, you guys are gonna see a lot of options. The most common ones are definitely when customer replied, when form is submitted. We also have when we miss a call. So other than that, there's more. Although we don't use membership for our case, since we're doing lead generation for real estate investors, most likely you're gonna be doing customer replied, form submitted, when contact tag is added, or when task is added, or it can also be when call status is. So depending on what action was done by the lead, that's what you want to be as the trigger. So in this example that we're doing, I wanted this to be a workflow that when a customer replied, and obviously I want to add a filter to make sure that this is specific to DNC responses. When I say DNC responses, people that actually said to not contact me. The ones that I'm really using is this two, either contains phrase or exact match phrase. I think this is pretty straightforward. But if you did use exact match phrase, this is only gonna work if you did add here a certain word that is an exact match phrase. So meaning, if I did stop, the system is only going to recognize any SMS responses that has the exact match phrase stop. It's not going to be like, hey, don't contact me, stop. That's not going to be recognized because the exact match phrase is just stop. And mind you guys, this is not just about the exact phrase. Also, it checks the character that you've used, the spaces that you've used. So if you want to do exact match phrase, you want to have multiple of this in here. So you're going to have there, exact match phrase stop. I'm going to save that trigger. I'm also going to add the trigger, still the same thing, customer replied, because there's going to be a lot of ways your client is going to tell you to not contact me, right? It's not just the word stop. So you can be like, stop. So remember I said characters and spaces. So here, this one is like capital S stop. This one is lowercase word stop because this is like exact match phrase that I'm actually using, right? But, so CC, why not use a different one? If it's like that, then it actually feels like I'm going to have to do a lot of that, right? Like all matching phrases. You're actually right about that. Obviously, what I would want to set up is just contains phrase, right? However, guys, you have to be really careful. I only almost do just contains phrase for DNC. Because everybody can say, hey, do not contact me, stop, right? Or stop, never contact me again. The word stop is not something that can be part of a different conversation to stop you from contacting me. Let's say the person says, if you do like contact, you're doing like workflows for wrong number. If you do say contains phrase wrong number, how I want to explain it is, if you do say contains phrase wrong number, and a person says, you've got the wrong number, but I've got another property. So if you do say contains phrase wrong number, what's gonna happen is you're auto marking them as read, so meaning it's removed from your conversation, so you're not gonna see it. And it's also gonna reply, if you did set it up the way that it's gonna say, okay, thanks for letting me know, have a nice day. So you're like trying to set up an automation that's already closing a conversation that it still can continue just because this contains this phrase, right? So you have to be really careful because your automation might not work or might not fit the scenario that was based on the conversation. Don't worry guys, this is only applicable for text conversations. Because if you're trying to set this automate your responses, and you really have to be careful, especially if you're including conversations. Yeah, hope everybody understand that. But again, for DNC, if somebody said stop, right, obviously that can happen to, that phrase can only be used when somebody just really want to be removed. So I can do like stop, and what else? You can add more. It's not just stop, but remove me from your list kind of thing. When somebody message you and say, yes, remove me from your list. That's part of it because it contains phrase. So the yes is still recognized because it has this phrase. Hope everybody understand that. Now that you have the trigger, the other thing that I'm doing, guys, is I also do if the lead, for example, just check. Right? Actually, it's part of this actions. But what I'm trying to say is, okay, now that you have the triggers, what do you want to happen next? This is so important for you guys to understand. I think I have discussed this on the previous lesson, but whenever I create workflows, always my starting point is being able to add a tag based on the trigger or the actions based on this initial trigger. So meaning if somebody responded DNC, I want the system to automatically tag them as DNC. I have existing tag for DNC. If somebody's tagged as DNC, other than being able to categorize them as do not contact, I also want them to be part of my pipeline. So remember that pipeline is your visual presentation. This is what you're going to see in your pipeline or opportunity tab, just so that you can move around the leads in your pipeline, like to easily see them. I want them to also be part of my pipeline, so you can select, okay, which pipeline stage, and you will have a separate discussion about creating your pipeline stage or customizing it. But yeah, you can select here which pipeline stage, then opportunity name. You can always customize your opportunity name. If you see this tag or label, you can always use custom value on how you want to name or how you want your lead to appear in your pipeline or like the dashboard. So for me, I did like contact name. I also want to see their contact address one, like the street address, the city, and contact state. Opportunity source, it's really up to you. So let's say you have contact source when you uploaded the list or your list, then you can go ahead and add opportunity source in there so that you would know that it came from prop stream or it came from whichever source. And then for the lead value, definitely you want to add, for us, we have a custom value for, let's say, total assessed value, right? You can have it there so that your client knows that this is how much. It's kind of like the estimated value of a property. You can also use like prop stream estimated value, but guys, this is custom made, so you can always just modify this from the settings and custom values. And then of course you want to identify that, okay, if somebody's tagged as DNC, then I want the system to change automatically the status to lost, because obviously that's a lost lead because it's DNC. As you can see, guys, you're again seeing the allow opportunity to move or allow duplicates. Oh, sorry. This is a different settings. But what I'm saying is, you also have this option to toggle on to allow your leads to move from previous stages or statuses in your pipeline. You can always turn this on to be able to make sure that they can move freely in your pipeline. Always turn this on. And allowing duplicates, guys, just turn it off because you don't want to see duplicate contacts in different stages. So the purpose of stages is to know where they at. So if you're creating duplicate opportunities, then obviously that's nonsense, right? Because then you're seeing them on multiple stages and now you cannot tell what actual stage they're in. So as soon as this is done, save action. So now you have the action that, okay, if somebody responded with this, automatically add my tag DNC, and at the same time create or make sure to move them to the necessary stage they should be in my pipeline. And then what else you can do? Obviously, if you want to automate a text that says, hey, I'm so sorry, you can send like a text for DNC. I don't know if I have a template. Do not contact. No, I don't think I have a template. For other people, they don't want to send a text, but just for the sake of this example, I'm going to say send text. And then here, guys, you can name your action, so like send text, however you want to call it. You can say hi, and then you have this custom values that you can actually use, like the smart field contacts if you want to get the contact's name to address them properly, right? You can have all of these other options to be able to customize your message well. And say, hey, I'm so sorry. I'll make sure to remove you from our list. Thanks, and have a great day. There. So you create like a very good response to not add them to future SMS or to tell them that we remove them from this marketing campaign. If you want to see how this is going to look like, you can always do test or a test. So you can just type in your phone number where you want to receive the text, so you can just see if it was properly formatted with the correct spacing and stuff like that. You can also see here the number of words that's there. You can attach any document if you need to. And then you can see statistics, which we're going to cover on a different video. But yeah, that's just the basic of sending an automatic text message. From there, you can also decide to send them an email if you want to. So you do have multiple actions that you can do, or multiple events, sequence of automated events that you can set up. So like, hey, I want to send them an email. I want to send a ringless voicemail or RVM. So you can do voicemail where you can upload or drop a file inside the CRM to be able to set that up. You can also add them to a manual call. So if you want to do like manual cold calling inside the system, you can do manual call. For us, we do this especially for initial campaign. That's because we want them to be added to be manually called if they didn't respond from our messages. So that's like our final action. In this example, obviously, if it's DNC, you don't want to do anything else, right? Other than tagging them correctly and at the same time probably sending them a text. And the other thing that I'm doing is, of course, if it's DND, to make sure that we've enabled DND. Make sure that you select enable DND for all channels. And at the same time, you want them to be removed from all workflows. That includes current, or actually you can turn this off because you still want them to be part of this. Just remove them from all workflows to make sure that they're not going to receive any more message in the future. So as soon as you're satisfied with this workflow, you can go ahead and save and hit publish for this to be activated. That's a simple way to be able to create your own workflow. But I just want to mention something. Like, this is my own tips and tricks that we're actually doing for our business, because honestly, guys, we're a huge fan of using tags to organize our leads. So basically, I'm going to go back to our existing workflows here. Let's just look at common response workflows. I'm going to do this. So if you will notice, we have all of these triggers because these are the common responses that we're getting whenever they wanted to be removed from our list or whenever they want to be added to DNC. It's not just stop, right? So there's more, so that you can use this as your reference to be able to set up your own DNC. What I was talking about earlier is this part, remove tag. If you would notice, we have a way, or we do add an action that says add tag DNC. But before adding the tag, we also remove the other tags. Like I said, we're super fond of tags wherein this helps us identify or categorize our leads, labels our lead. And all of these tags are actually attached to a flow in a pipeline. When I say it's attached to it and we move a lead from one stage inside our pipeline, so for example, from DNC to all of a sudden making an offer, it will trigger that the system changes the tag to just offer and removes the DNC tag and anything else that is not necessary there. It also added them to the new workflow, which is just offer. And it removes these tags because we don't want to confuse the system. Because what happens, guys, is when you connect DNC to multiple workflows and you use that tag, then obviously the system is going to be confused. So you want to be able to attach the tag to your workflow. So meaning you only want one tag as much as possible to one contact. The rule is one contact, one tag. Unless it's like you're trying to identify the resource it came from. If we're talking about status, you want just one status to be in one contact. So if it's not a fit, it's not a fit. It's not going to be part of wrong number. It's always going to be just one tag. So what you do is list down all your tags. Make sure that whenever you create it, you remove all the unnecessary tags you have in the system. And then obviously add the correct tag. I hope everybody gets that. I'm going to show you in a bit what I'm talking about in there. But the other thing is you have an option to definitely edit conversation to mark it as read, although that's already part of your general settings, so you don't have to do that. Or you can add a note, so like, hey, add note to not contact. At least for footprints, you can see to not contact that list anymore, right? Let me just show you guys what I'm talking about in terms of connecting your tags to flows and to your pipeline. Notice that here, I have a lead, right, pipeline or opportunities. If I did move this lead over to qualify, notice that it's undefined because I don't have a name in the system. It just didn't change the pipeline stage to qualify. But what it's going to do is, so that's the purpose of remove tag. It's also going to remove previous tag that's attached to this lead. So you can see that it now has the qualify tag. What I'm trying to say is if I move this back to appointment, it should remove the previous tag qualify and it's going to update the tag to appointment. Look it up again. So then you can see that the previous tag qualify is not there anymore, but we have the appointment tag instead. Because again, we don't want the system to be confused that your appointment tag is actually being used to different workflows. You always have to have that remove tag as part of your workflow if you want your CRM to be efficient whenever you're moving leads. You want to be able to tag the lead, and then when it's tagged, that's what's going to happen. Or if you move the lead to your pipeline, this is what's going to happen. So like it's pretty connected to each other. That's basically how you're going to create a workflow inside REI Reply. Again, being able to identify why you're creating the workflow. So just make it really simple. Don't make it really complicated. Simple, and at the same time, easy to understand. If you have any questions, please do let me know. That's it.